Welcome back to part two here, Rugby. I'm still joined in the studio with Brian Noble and my partner in crime, JJB. Epic first half, but I want to go back in time, Nobby, right back to the beginning, because we all know, we've seen it personally with the Jamaica journey, how important it is to get into schools, into the communities, inspiring the next generation, and you share that philosophy. You were actually, tell us your story into rugby league.
I'm a big believer in schools rugby league and playing rugby at school, because you've got a captive audience. My argument for it is you've got a captive audience. You've got a load of kids that probably want to play. They just need organising. So one of my big things is that the rugby league should have spent years just putting development officers into schools if the teachers wouldn't do it. Because my first game of rugby league was at Drummond Road Middle School as an 11-year-old. I'd never played at Mr. Worrell. I don't know his first name because you didn't know teacher's first name. They were just Mr. Worrell. You were scared to death of all. You know, we played rugby league and we ended up in a final against Hutton School, which is another Bradford school. An under-12s final as a curtain raiser at Odsall. Now imagine as an 11-year-old going, I'm in a Coliseum. This is a citadel. This is all of these people here are watching these giants of people and men. Bear in mind you're only 11, so everybody was. So if it hadn't been for school rugby, I don't think I'd have played. I actually started playing at Bradford Police Boys Club, but again that was because I played for my school club, Hanson. The next school actually had another Alan Davidson, sports-minded rugby league person. I think he played for Oldham and Swinton as a professional English teacher. So there was an English teacher teaching me trying to teach me the classics, you know, all these poets and things. And then, and you're playing rugby league on Thursday nights as well against all the other schools. And Hanson School actually won the English Schools Cup 2 years running, which is unbelievable because they're all footballers. So my point there is all the athletes that had a chance of every sport, a lot of them played rugby league. In between that, I played my serious rugby down at the Bradford Police Boys Club, which was a community club where I grew up in Manningham. That literally, I suppose the alternatives were, well, should we break into a few cars or should we go play sport at the Bradford Police Boys Club, which was originally run by the police, is where it gets its name from, but wasn't then. You know, Trevor Foster was involved with it. It was a club for young people. And we played basketball. I hadn't even seen the basketball. So we played basketball. There was a boxing club there. We all had to box as well. Pop Allen was the boxing coach. You know, you'll be boxing as well as playing your other sports, won't you? Yeah, so everybody had to have a crack at everything. And underneath, interestingly enough, on the downstairs floor, there was a shooting range. There was about 12 where everybody could use air rifles. Well, bear in mind, 50% of the population went to be armed robbers and things like that. It was good target practice for them. But that's where, you know, I played rugby league as well. And so the two things there, like the community club and the schools rugby, I think we miss schools rugby so much.
Yeah.
You know, I just wish we had some kind of programme where, certainly in the north of England, it was vibrant and it was bouncing, because you get access to kids that I would never have played rugby league. I wasn't part of a community that was a rugby league community, like there are, which I'm a big fan of. If you live in that area, you would go play rugby league if there was a club there. But if you didn't, where would you have your first taste of rugby? And it was school, because, you know, kids pretty much then didn't have a choice. Noble, you're playing in the rugby team on Thursday. Yeah, fair play. How do I play rugby? You know, so you start and you learn, but your athleticism comes through and all the different skills and shapes and sizes. And you know what? You get to like it for those kids that are like physical activity and like that challenge of combat and things like. We all know that rugby league's the greatest combat team sport in the world, bar none.
Yes.
You can't tell me another. You can't even qualify it statistically or athletically that it isn't, because we all know that it is. And then you go into the expansion bit of me and I'm thinking, but we haven't told the world yet. There's too many places we can go to. And one of the things about, I'm jumping in, for the first year at Toronto, 2 years, we went to places that had never seen rugby league, Clearly, Jamaica, there was a development programme. We went to Kingston, Jamaica. We had a blast for a week. 200 athletes there that I thought, if we just got 10% of this lot, the game grows so much. Yeah. But we hadn't shown them it, and once we'd shown them it, they were tailor-made for it. But we also went to places like where we got the same, Vancouver, Philadelphia, Toronto, places where they're down into Florida. We went to Tampa. We must have trialled over 500 and 600 people who'd never played rugby league. And I'm thinking, if we put the time and effort in there, there's such a wealth of talent.
Jonesy, let me ask you really quickly, because we're going to look at Sean Lachlan's gratitude video. Sean Lachlan is obviously finishing up in his career. What kind of a player is he? What to play against? Just frame that when you know you're going to play against Sean Lachlan.
He's one of the best, and I've said it a few times. You don't sometimes understand how good a player is till he's played with them and playing international, albeit not that many times, but playing international with him, you just understand how good he is and how big an influence. He's a bit like Gareth Ellis, you know. He's one of those people around which everything revolves, a Kevin Sinfield, a Paul Sculthorpe, and it all moves through him. And I think that's why, obviously, as he's got a bit older, they saved him for some of the bigger games. But whether it be defence, vision, skill, ability, physical prowess, he had it all, mate. Had it all. The perfect rugby player. And I think in this story, Dave Marlin, who was a teacher at St John Fisher, talked about him. I think he picked Stuart Jones out as a young kid, or Stephen Wild, and whacked him, even though he was I don't know if he was a bit younger or same age. And he knew then that Sean Lachlan was going to be a great player. And going back to what you're talking about with schools, you get this real insight into how important rugby league is to Wigan and how important rugby league is to the schools in Wigan. They want to produce rugby league players, and I grew up listening to stories from Harry Jepson talking about Hunslet and Leeds and how many players they brought up then. And it's something that anecdotally I've no experience of, because all the rugby league that I understood as a kid came through community clubs. Yeah. And Brian's absolutely right. We need to get schools back playing it, because Wigan's a great example of how you can bear so much fruit from the talent that's there. So listen, Dave Marlin, I've mentioned him a few times, a real unsung hero of rugby league, and it's great to be able to get him in this video, because without him, players like Sean Lachlan and Stephen Wild and all the rest of them would never have had the career they've had.
And they made the famous wall. They made the famous
wall, yeah.
wall.
Brian, St John Fisher, I can't speak highly enough of it, but it's a wall. It's a lot bigger than this one behind us, and there must be 40, 50 that goes right back to Sean Edwards and Mike Gregory, and even players that I don't even know before that. And it's aspirational for these young kids who come down from the junior school that's literally next door up into their playground, see the wall, wow, that's where I want to go, and they can see the DW Stadium from the playground as well. So it's almost a youthful progression of expectation and inspiration that this school's had. And it's fantastic, Simo. It's great to see.
Let's hear right now the Robleak Cares gratitude video from Sean Lachlan.
Dear Mr. Mallon, I am writing you this letter in an attempt to show my gratitude for all the help, support and guidance that you gave me as a young boy starting on what became a career in rugby league. Dave Mallon, he was one of the first teachers I had as a kid. First and foremost, just a real good teacher. As a kid starting school, getting introduced to rugby, football, it was always about just the involvement for everyone who wanted to be involved in it, and he gave everyone an opportunity to do that.
It was obvious as soon as we got him playing, he was a bit more than just a talented player. There's another lad here, Stuart Jones, who's actually a year older. Very, very hard tackler, very fair, but, you know, people kept out of his word. And Stuart came through in this particular part of the match with the ball, and Sean hit him with a bell ringer, smashed him down, and stood over him. I never told him this. I said that was the day I decided, yeah, no question, you will make it. My earliest memories of playing rugby and other sports are those from school. I feel privileged to have had a teacher and a coach with a knowledge of the game and a commitment to the sport that you have. I will be forever grateful for the platform that you gave me to follow my ambitions to become a professional rugby league player. Yours sincerely, Sean Lachlan. What a fantastic letter. A fantastic letter.
I know if you asked a lot of people who'd influenced him growing up, he'd be top of the list, and yeah, I don't think he realised how much he has impacted on me.
It's really a bit emotional, and I feel very humbled. What Sean's now written, that will forever be with me.
absolutely outstanding to hear from the England, Great Britain, Wigan legend Sean Lachlan, and just his feelings towards Dave and what Dave brought into his life is really important. It shows a lot about him as a person, Jonesy.
Yeah, it does. Dave's a superstar, and Sean got a great deal of reverence for him. It's funny, there's not that many players where you've got that awe when you see him. I bumped into him actually on holiday in Florida.
Yeah.
Got to a local gym and I'm on treadmill and Lockers tapped me, "Hey, Jonesy." I thought, wow, of all places in Wales. Just one of those sort of
holiday together.
Local, yeah.
You weren't stalking him, were you?
Pardon?
You weren't stalking him, were you?
I bet you any money. I bet you any money. When he started training, you raised your levels.
Just turned it up a little bit. What you got on there? How long are you going for?
Yeah.
But no, Lockers is one of those where you outstanding, mate. Loads of reverence for him.
Mate, I always laugh because one of the best stories I've heard, and it's this rugby league, honestly, rugby has been the best thing in my life for just meeting people and hearing stories. One of the best stories I've ever heard about Jonesy were from Mal Rayleigh. When Mal Rayleigh come to Leeds, and Jonesy were a bit of a, he thought he was a man and all this stuff. And Mal just got him on a rower?
That was a bike.
On a bike, challenged him on a bike. And Mal must be in his 50s, 60s. And he absolutely blitzed him.
Yeah. Well, I imagine there won't be many people who've come across in rugby league that's got more mental determination than Mal Rayleigh. And I was naive and got done.
That's naive is the best I could probably say for you there, Jonesy, because you don't pick on Malcolm really, would you? What's wrong with you, man?
Absolutely outstanding. We've got this sword there, and I want to just bring it. You grab the sword.
I might hit you with it.
You can hit me with it if you want, if it makes you feel good. Sonny Bill Williams. I want to finish off with Sonny Bill before we end with a journey down memory lane for you. Sonny Bill came to this. How did Sonny Bill come about? Because you told me one time, I said, "Are you going to get him?" And you were like really coy about it. And I thought, nah, they can't get Sonny Bill. It's not going to happen. Tell us the Sonny story and tell us the relevance to the sword.
Well, the sword and Sonny are not quite connected, but I will connect them because I'm a clever person and I'm a storyteller. Sonny came about because David Argyle, we got into Super League. We thought we'd been there 12 months before, which was a bit of a shock to the system. And I think, when you look at the story, the loss to London, deserved loss as well on the day, brilliant London, set the club back a little bit, in relation to money's coming in and money's not coming in. However, when they got to the big league, they needed presence, and who was the biggest rugby player on the planet? And we'd spoken about a few, trust me. And so Sonny Bill was identified. He was just in the middle of a World Cup, and I think David Argyle through the World contact Sonny Bill Williams' agent again, and now Martin Vickers, the financial director, had an in with his agent, which was hard to get, Coda NASA. Anyway, the noise came back, he's interested. And I knew it was done and dusted, and everybody's saying, you'll never get Sonny Bill. And I'm thinking, it was done. And it's just so easy. I'm not being funny. Mac has gone out there, and along with Martin Vickers, and they've done the deal, they've crossed the T's, they've dotted it. And it happened really quickly, maybe 2 weeks. Because Sonny Bill understood the dynamics of North America. When you look at his career, what else could he achieve, etc., etc. And then he landed. So we fast forward. He lands, and I used to have quite a few conversations with him, when he got there, and clearly he knew of me and I knew of him. I'd met him a couple of times over in New Zealand and Australia when he'd been in and about. And his dad was on his way over. My dad wants to meet you. He says, we want to know about the sword. I'm thinking, who's dobbed me in here? Never mind, I got lots of mates in Australia and things like that, and the Roosters. And I actually was at the Roosters for a few months when Matty Elliott was there with Brian Smith for that year. And I can't remember if Sonny Bill was there. We met him anyway, he'd found out that when I was coaching, certainly at Bradford, did I take it to North? I didn't take it to North Wales. I think I'd have scared them too much. I have a sword similar to this, but it's a copy of an Anglo-Saxon sword, around 1066 when Harold Godwinson, with the arrow in his eye, all of that. So I had a couple that I'd made down at the Royal Armouries down at Leeds. And I used to find, I find this empowering. I don't know why. I don't know if there's some kind of ghostly story from a historic past where one of my members of my family found this empowering. It was a little bit heavier than this, but at Bradford I used to find like to have it in my hand. And when I was doing reviews, I just get carried away, and apparently I used to walk around and point the ball at lads. And even Jimmy, people like Jimmy, they were seasoned people, and I'm pointing a sword at them saying, mate, if I see you 2 metres out of the line there doing your own thing, why are you not back there? I've been slapping this. And I didn't realise how psychotic it looked until that day. And I think Carl Harrison actually took a version of that event to Salford when he coached at Salford. Yeah. But then I'd point at a bit of video going, and I just wanted to point it really. But apparently it caused much fear and gross mismanagement of what I was and what I wasn't, because they were convinced. I think it was either Brian Mack or Joe Vagana just says, man, I didn't move. I think if I move, you're going to cut my head off. Yeah. So I must have been quite an imposing figure. But yeah, I like history, and I study history. So,
Jonesy, you've got to pass it on the sword,
mate. The Kingmaker. The Kingmaker. Coach. Thank you very much. It's been anointed. Knighted.
Feels empowering, isn't it? So you feel like saying to one of your players, mate, what are you doing here?
This is my life. This is how I live my life. I'm a medieval type guy, and my favourite place in the world outside of Leeds is Warwick Castle, and that's what this Kingmaker sword was based on. The Earl of Warwick, and I love my medieval history, and I don't know if I went back in time one day like yourself. I don't know where it comes from. Just feel empowered when you've got a nice metallic weapon.
See, there is a problem with it though. If you're ever unlucky enough to make the other bloke come in the other way with a sword, you're going to have to get it on, aren't you?
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping that sword never comes in when I've got my sword. I'd have to get it on.
Brilliant, mate. We'll sign the desk. Jonesy, we'll see everybody back next week. Thank you so much to Jamie Jones-Buchanan, to Brian Noble. Enjoy this trip down memory lane. We'll see you for more Rugby AM next week. Good night and God bless.
I'm Brian Noble, and this is my memory from down memory lane.
We're coming up to the final seconds now. Deacon, Mike Forshaw, he hold on to it, there it is! And Brian Noble puts his arms aloft. With this team, he's won a World Cup Challenge, he's won a Grand Final, and his second Challenge Cup final.
Huge expectation around the city. We were a very successful entity then, and it's the big rivals from 9 miles across the road. The Leeds Rhinos were in town on that big day, and so expectations in the city of Bradford are always very high when you play the Rhinos, who are a very, very good team. And how did the players prepare? How did they go about preparing? Brilliant. I've probably not had a team that prepared better. What I would say is that we're all dependent on how the opposition go as well, because I'm sure Leeds prepared well, and I think the game transpired that way. So great week's preparation, not over anxious, not over excited, nice and relaxed.
Leeds winners of the Challenge Cup 11 times, Bradford 5 times. Who will win the Challenge Cup final of 2003?
I can never remember intimately what I said to players before a game. I generally have 3 or 4 points on the defence and on the attack, and then some general things, how you hand the ball over, these kind of things. But I probably went round a few of the individuals and poked them in relation to motivation, what makes them tick personally. This is who you're against, this is what you need to do personally, and then the general message. But again, when you're in a final, I think it's game day and things like that is a little bit too late. I sometimes think those speeches are for coaches. Now, half-time's different. You can make a difference at half-time. I genuinely believe that in relation to your performance. But I also wanted to start games very, very well. And so I used to pound the fact that if we're in this game after 20 minutes, we've got a great chance against this team.
Earlier on. Well, he's running away with it. He looks as if he's lost the ball, and Radford is going for the line. Now then, we will surely bring in Jeff Berry, but that took Mr. Smith totally by surprise.
Watch the reaction of Barry McDermott. There's the angle that should come in maybe. Well, again, it's a very tough call. Look at the reaction of Barry McDermott.
Yeah.
But he's bound to do that, isn't he? He's bound to say it was ripped out because he didn't fancy chasing Radford.
I can't believe the try was disallowed. The first one, what's wrong with these officials? Let's bash the officials again. And you can do that when you won. It's hard, and there are quite a few more controversial points on both sides throughout the game. But I think we started pretty dominantly. A team that is confident. I think the Leeds team was really enthused that day. You know, that they had their guard of starlets, you know, the Sinfields and the Burrows, but they also had David Ferner in there, and Chris McKenna, I think, was playing for them, or went on to play for the Bulls. So he certainly made an impression on that day. But they had a better side than people were making out. That's why they were in the final. You always inkling at the back, but you know, the first half, 14-8, Leeds are up. And you're thinking, how did that happen? And what do I say to them at half-time to make sure it's not going to continue and we get back into the game? I thought we got a little bit nervous and stopped playing and allowed Leeds back into the game. And that's not taking it away from Leeds. They are a super club, and they were a super team then.
Bradford looking to go into the half-time with some points. Good pass, good reverse pass too. Fighting the chip. Oh! I think Viney Golo's come from nowhere.
I tell you what, I thought it was a fabulous try in more ways than one. We'd been doing the run around and couldn't quite get the people in the right place in practice for a couple of weeks, and I think we nailed that one. I think he put it on his toe, did Deeks, when he'd done the run around, and Les actually went out the field of play, came back in and actually finished that play. Brilliant finish, as only Leslie Vinacolo could, because when you're that size and that speed, to change direction the way they, people used to forget that about Les. He could change direction really, really quickly, and it was a brilliant finish in the corner, and I think it gave us the right lift to go into half-time and to go carry on with the game in the second half, because if we're looking at it from our point of view, a Bradford point of view, this wasn't on the script. Leeds weren't supposed to aim up like this. We had written a different script in relation to how people play and how they don't play, but Leeds gave it to us, you know, and we responded in the right way with that Les try.
Knowles again. Peacock trying to crash in. Oh, now then. We'll have to check.
Oh, no, not the video ref again. Make a decision, referee.
Verifying the try. So Bradford, 2 minutes before half-time, trailing 14-8. 2 minutes after half-time, leading 18-14.
Well, we got to 2 scores with the Deeks penalty, you know, after JP had dragged about 15 blokes over the line as only he can, and yeah, that was a terrific score to start the second half. We got ourselves a start, which gives you the breathing space to think about things when they're not quite going your way, and subsequently Leeds did come hammering back at us, didn't they, you know, in a unbelievably close finish. But the penalty kick was important. That's how close the game was. That's how important it was to us in relation to keeping the tins cracking, as they say in cricket parlance, keep them moving. 2 scores, you can think about what you're doing. You know, I'm a big believer when you're behind, you play like you're ahead, but when you're ahead, you play like you're behind. So we still had that element of urgency. I was confident we had that. But Leeds, clearly, as the half progressed, had their say. Well, I think one of the things that final will be remembered from, and I certainly, when they got the penalty, I thought they'll level the scores. But they were really confident then. They were playing football. You know, Leeds, I can understand why Kevin thought, no, we've got these blokes on the rack. And so we had to provide an element of resilience and character that you need to win a big final. And was that the defining moment? Probably for different reasons. People say, oh, should have kicked the goal and then it'd have gone to extra time or whatever it was, or a replay. I can't remember what they did in those days in the rules. It doesn't really matter. But to go level with, I can't remember, it was 10 minutes to go, 7 minutes to go, something crazy. And then we had to hang on as well. It was incredible because Leeds did pound us. They made that decision to go for the 6 to put us to bed. And there's lots of conjecture as to why was that the right thing to do or wasn't it. It subsequently, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Subsequently turned out to be the wrong decision in many times. But there were other parts of the game, and those people involved in the game understand that on many different occasions it's about the feel of your team, and they were confident. But we had to be confident in our defence, and we were.
We're coming up to the final seconds now. Deacon, Mike Forshaw, he'll hold on to it. There it is! And Ronald Noble puts his arms aloft. With this team, he's won a World Cup Challenge, he's won a Grand Final, and his second Challenge Cup final.
Well, it's weird. It was surreal, the final whistle, because I thought they'd blown the final whistles, and so I was going to the lift at the Millennium, so you have to get the lift down to the stadium, the side of the stadium. I think I heard the hooter go, I was going, because I wanted to be on the sideline at the final whistle. I got stuck in the lift. It was one of these lifts that goes 3rd floor, 5th floor, 5th floor, and I'm going, God, one of the best moments of my life, and I'm stuck in a lift. Anyway, I got out the other side and all the hoo-ha and the yee-haws and the beat, and I'm going, yee-haw, and people thought, what was this divvy doing? It's been over 2, 4, 3 minutes. So, yeah, brilliant day, and a slight distraction at the end, but yeah, what a day. I'm Brian Noble, and that was my memory lane.